Some particularly lively rumours for you this afternoon. The first involves a man in demand. He's hot property, Timo Werner. He'll be in action against Spurs in the Champions League tonight for Leipzig. And apparently he's torn between Liverpool, Manchester City and Manchester United this summer. They all want him. He's apparently available for 51 million quid. Guy, who should he go for?
I'm a Man United fan.
Yes, which is not relevant. If you're Timo Werner, where would you go and why?
I think if Liverpool's interest was really genuine, I think you would be most tempted to go there. I fully accept that. I thought it was interesting talking to Tom just then. It wasn't a conversation about Manchester United particularly. It was about Bruno Fernandes. But he did start to create or to paint a picture where it suddenly made you think, United fan or not, more than you already do by watching the improved team as they are at the moment. You add possibly, although I think it's unlikely that Pogba plays much of a part for United in the future, but possibly Pogba, definitely Marcus Rashford, and then anyone else who gets signed this summer, and if there's Champions League as a possibility, then that's going to entice a good quality of player. Then it could start being a really, really good team again quite quickly. I think, though, Liverpool, with the German connection that he's got with Jurgen Klopp, that'll be a factor, don't you think? And that versatility that he's got, the ability to play across the front three, the speed that he has that replicates what Mo Salah and Sadio Mane can bring to a team, the maybe possibility that Firmino's going to move on and therefore there's a place that opens up for him. I think he'll be looking at that one and thinking that's the one that he fancies most.
Yeah, but that's assuming he can get in the Liverpool team, right? And I know he's a confident lad and he'll be looking at it and assuming that he can. But actually, if there aren't transfers out of that team, Roberto Firmino, if he doesn't go to Bayern Munich, doesn't lose his place. He's barely scored. He hasn't scored at Anfield this season. And he still doesn't lose his place because he's so good at linking the play.
Because there's no competition. It's because there's no competition.
No, I disagree.
He's not been that good at linking the play recently. Partly because Liverpool as a team haven't been playing that well. But as we've discussed, the results before that bad run weren't. They were good results. The performances weren't brilliant. I don't think Bobby Firmino's been anywhere near his best since certainly before Christmas.
But this Liverpool team, and we've heard this from our Northwest correspondent Mark Flanagan in the past, if that front three have lost their mojo, is that Liverpool team that good? I feel like the mask is starting to slip. They're very good, but Virgil van Dijk previously looked like Superman, and Liverpool fans were telling us he won every tackle and he couldn't miss a header and all the rest of it. He's shown that he is mortal. Andy Robertson has shown that he is mortal. Alisson is injured and Adrian is definitely mortal. I look at it from Werner's point of view. You say you can go in and be the number one striker at United, and behind me I've got Rashford, Fernandes, Martial. Yes, please.
Yeah,
why not? Or Manchester City if Aguero goes.
Look, I think it's tempting, and I'd love to think he'd consider Man United strongly. I just think if you're talking about going to Man United, who have been at best in and out of Europe's top competition over the last few years, who have been guilty of kind of creating a culture where players just rest on their laurels, pick up their paycheck and don't bother about achieving as much as they can. He's probably thinking, 24 years old, as he's going to be this summer, he'll be thinking, this is the prime of my career, this is probably my main contract, where am I most likely to win multiple trophies? At Man United, who have barely won anything for 7 years or so, or Liverpool, who in the last 2 years have won Champions League and Premier League. All I'm saying is that'll be the reality, and I think as well, even if Firmino stays, he'll see it as a challenge, and I think Klopp would love having that option for 50-odd million quid, which is what we're talking about. This guy's great value. You look at the goals he's scoring, if there's a release clause that allows someone to get him for that, it's great value. I think anyone would be mad not to have him. I think Liverpool will be leading the way.
Well, there's an Arsenal fan in me going, well,
shut up.
If you're selling Aubameyang, let's have a flutter.
Well, there is a point, maybe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the volume grows on that one.
And Lacazette being linked with Atletico Madrid as well, so there could be gaps. I would love it, though, if from the point of view of... I would love it if the kind of arrogance of English reporting is shown up and he just goes to Barcelona. Yeah. And we all go,
or
right.
Bayern Munich, let's be honest, probably most likely.
Yeah, probably.
Surely. Normally happens.
Very depressing. You're listening to Transfer Talk on Love Sport with Isuzu. Trade in your pickup and get up to $2,000 extra off an award-winning Isuzu D-Max. Visit isuzu.co.uk. And your second rumour this afternoon is Manchester United again willing to spend £70 million on Grealish, but no more. And we saw this with Bruno Fernandes. They aren't necessarily that willing to budge. Guy Watts, first up, Is 70 million going to be enough?
I think it depends massively on Aston Villa's status, doesn't it? If they're a Premier League club, I still think it probably is enough. It certainly gets them to the table. You're certainly in negotiations. If they're in the Championship, they can't command anything like 70 million. The record for a player out the Championship as it stands is it not James Maddison? 22 million quid still? If it's not, it's only a few million more than that. They won't be able to ask for much more than 40, maybe 50 at an absolute maximum would be my guess, because if you're in the Championship, your hands are so tied. You just can't command the same fees. They can't use the logic of, well, we need him to try and stay in the Premier League. They'll have tried that this season. As it stands, it doesn't look like it's going to have worked. I think 50 million would definitely get him if they go down. I think 70 million probably gets him even if they stay up. Smartly invested, 70 million is still really good money. You just question whether Aston Villa are going to spend that smartly based on what they've done in the last year.
There are some people who argue, and I think they're idiots, but they argue that Jack Grealish is actually too good for Manchester United. He shouldn't go there because he could go straight to a Real Madrid or a Barcelona. I personally, don't get me wrong, I rate him, but I think that's nonsense. But is there a possibility here? I feel like we're all talking about Grealish to United as if it's done and inevitable and it's definitely going to happen. Is there actually a possibility that someone bigger or someone abroad or even a different English club comes along and goes, Jack, no, over here, mate, cheers?
Of course there is, but I think what Man United have shown, even in the last few years, is an ability to still attract young players, young English players, young British players. They've always done that. I know I'm biased, but better than any other big club. And I think that's remained the case in the last few years. I think they'll have that little bit of extra allure for Grealish as a kid of his age, a guy who's grown up, seen them be so successful. You mentioned Real Madrid and Barcelona. Let's not forget, these clubs are not what they were. Real Madrid are 2-1 down in the last 16 in the Champions League. Barcelona are tied at 1-1, and they're not even going to have their fans there because they're going to be behind closed doors in the second leg against little old Napoli. But these guys are not, automatically the biggest, best clubs in Europe anymore.
But they are, for exactly the same reason that he would go to Manchester United. It's not just about the team. It's about the name.
Yeah, the club. Yeah, I get that, but I can't remember what word you used. I think maybe you used a better club, and I just thought...
A bigger fish, I think I said.
Well, maybe a bigger fish is just about fair enough, but I think that with Jack Grealish, if it's about the football, if Man City or Liverpool are interested, then you go there. If it's about just getting a move to a big club, any of these names are massively appealing. He'd be a great signing for United because he'd be a great signing for nearly any club. I think he's shown that this year. He's fantastic, but you can't expect it of him every single game, as we saw last night.
And there's going to be a really weird dynamic if they go down, because with all of the financial difficulty at Villa, which we've spoken about a lot on this show, you would expect the dynamic to be, Jack's our best player, let's keep him. They will be trying to get as much as they can, but basically hawking him to the highest seller, you'd have thought, because
that'd be a fire sale.
He is their ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. Oh, what's that? We've massively financially mismanaged a football club.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I present to you one man with a silly haircut.
Yeah, exactly. And that could be absolutely massive in making sure that not only do Villa not have a sort of terrible season next year, but that they don't have real difficulties in the next few years. Last thing to say, we talk a lot about Jack Grealish. I think that Premier League clubs should be falling over themselves to sign John McGinn as well if Villa go down. I imagine he'll be a snip compared to Grealish, and he's a heck of a good player himself.
What kind of level is he at? I mean, you'd have thought not quite at United's, but I mean, an Everton, a Spurs.
Spurs do have a lot of midfielders, just not maybe enough of the high enough quality. Did you say Everton? I think Everton could probably be improved by John McGinn, definitely. I wonder if Carlo Ancelotti thinks much of him. He won't have seen much of him since he came here. He's been injured, of course. I think, though, that sort of club, the Europa League clubs, I would say, is about John McGinn's level. I think he's good enough. Might turn out to be better than that still, but probably hasn't been as impressive as Grealish. Probably won't get the same links that Grealish will, but he's a good player. Anyway, more tomorrow at 4:30. A Suzu transfer talk here on Love Sport.